Portal was the first video game I ever played that made me think to myself, maybe there's something more than just a fun pastime to be had out of these. Maybe they can even be as good as books or animation. Admittedly, I had a bit of a narrow perspective of media at the time. I had yet to watch a truly excellent movie or listen to an enrapturing piece of music, and my experience with video games was limited to Pokemon, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Super Mario Land, and The Legend of Zelda, with a few random first-person shooters and a plethora of terrible Flash games thrown in for good measure. Consequently, I hold Portal and its sequel Portal 2 in a place of nostalgic reverie as the first truly good games I ever played. And that's not to knock any of the games I mentioned previously, I love all of those as well. But there's something very different about Portal. It defined how puzzle games would be made for the next decade, of course, and its minimalist storytelling has been replicated by loads of indie titles as a way to save development time and encourage community engagement. But for me, there was a moment of payoff towards the beginning of Portal 2 that genuinely affected me when I originally played it, and I think it still holds up now as an exemplar of how to evoke feeling in a player.
Oh, did I accidentally fizzle that before you could complete the test? I'm sorry. Go ahead and grab another one. Oh, no. I fizzled that one too. Oh well. We have warehouses full of the things. Absolutely worthless. I'm happy to get rid of them. Every test chamber is equipped with an emancipation grill at its exit, so that test subjects cannot smuggle test objects out of the test area. This one is broken. Don't take anything with you. I think that one was about to say, I love you. They are sentient, of course. We just have a lot of them.
So what's going on here and why is it evocative? Well, let's put it in context. The concept for Portal was initially created by student developers at DigiPen University as an arbacular drop. Valve hired the students to explore the mechanics and systems of their project further, eventually leading to their development of Portal. In 2007, Valve released the Orange Box, a collection of 3 games packaged together. Half-Life 2 and Team Fortress 2 were both sequels in an established series, but the final game in the box was a new IP, Portal. Portal eventually became popular enough to get its own sequel in 2011. Like its predecessor, Portal 2 imported mechanics and developers from a DigiPen student game, this time one called Tag: The Power of Paint. The original Portal is very minimalistic in just about every facet. From its few but well-utilized mechanics, to its one-speaking character and very basic plot, to its incredibly short level list. None of that is to say the original Portal isn't good, though. All things considered, it's very effective at making do with what it has. But Portal 2 took the basics of the original and expanded on them in just about every possible way. It almost triples the number of unique puzzle mechanics, expands the story into a real narrative with complex characters, and of course increases the length of the main game, as well as introducing a co-op mode with its own story and levels. It's very difficult to look at these two games in isolation, though, as they act more as one long experience that should be played in sequence. They tell one complete story over the course of the 2 single-player campaigns and Portal 2's co-op campaign. In the single-player campaigns, you play as a mute human test subject, a plaything of the only remaining entity in Aperture Science's Center for Research and Development, the Genetic Life Form and Disk Operating System, shortened to GLaDOS. As GLaDOS puts you through a gauntlet of dangerous tests, you attempt to escape and, in the process, learn the deranged history of the complex that serves as your prison. You navigate the test chambers of Aperture Laboratories using a device known as the Portal Gun, which joins 2 separate locations via portals, allowing you to enter one and exit the other. A typical test chamber involves putting a box on a pressure-sensitive button to open a door so you can advance to the next test. This is often much more complex than it sounds, as finding the box, getting yourself to the box, getting the box to the button, and getting yourself to the door can all be complicated by a myriad of obstructions, but that's the basic premise of just about every puzzle in both games. In one of the later tests of Portal 1, you are introduced to a special little box known as the Companion Cube. You are tasked with escorting this special cube through a large level, as you need it for several different aspects of the puzzle in several separate areas of the room. The Companion Cube is special in both its unique appearance, sporting a pink heart on each face, and for its abnormal introduction to the player. To even enter the level proper, you need to first use the Companion Cube as stairs and then as a shield to protect yourself from some traps, immediately cementing your companionship with this cube from the onset. Throughout the level, GLaDOS also makes remarks such as,
The Enrichment Center reminds you that the weighted Companion Cube cannot speak. In the event that the weighted Companion Cube does speak, the Enrichment Center urges you to disregard its advice.
Further anthropomorphizing the Companion Cube. And then at the end of the level, before you can move on to the next test, you are required to physically drop your cube into an incinerator. You even get the achievement Fratricide for doing it, driving home the idea that the Companion Cube is at the very least somewhat sentient. Much, much later, towards the beginning of Portal 2, after having killed, then accidentally reviving GLaDOS, you are tossed back into a test chamber, and the first thing you find is another companion cube. But GLaDOS, being rather miffed by the whole you killing her thing, fizzles it before you can complete the test. Luckily, she gives you another one, but immediately fizzles that one too. Finally, GLaDOS grants you a third cube, and allows you to work your way through the chamber. Upon reaching the end of the test with your unscathed companion cube, you realize that the field which normally destroys boxes, spheres, portals, and other testing materials is broken on this level. So you rescue your companion cube, and just as you're about to transfer to the next chamber, GLaDOS destroys it and admonishes you for your attempted jailbreak. Up until this point in the story, GLaDOS has been less of an out-and-out villain and more of just an antagonist. Sure, she tries to kill you at the end of Portal 1, but she doesn't seem to be doing it out of any inherent malice. You've simply served your purpose as a test subject, and now it's time for her to dispose of you. And yeah, okay, maybe that's pretty unambiguously evil and dehumanizing, but she's a robot who seems to be following her programming, making her a lot less responsible. Of course, upon confronting and ultimately killing her, you find out she's fully aware and in control of her actions. She's revealed to have killed her creators and all other Aperture employees in a somewhat misguided attempt at attaining freedom. But her more intrinsically villainous personality only starts to become apparent in this section of Portal 2. GLaDOS begins taunting and insulting everything about you, of course, but her total and complete lack of care for the lives of the companion cubes and the way she builds up your hopes of freeing at least one, only to completely squash your tiny and insignificant resistance, makes her into an enemy instead of just an obstruction. Interestingly, Portal 2 then spends the rest of its playtime attempting, and achieving reasonably well, to convince the player that GLaDOS actually has some legitimately good sides to her. The already present human parts of her personality are cranked up, and some new ones are added in for good measure. But even then, the absolute best relationship GLaDOS manages to form with the player is one of partnership and rivalry that never quite shakes its antagonistic undertones. Which is still somewhat of an achievement, as GLaDOS routinely attempts to shed her human attributes of anger, frustration, jealousy, fear, and other petty emotions in favor of her colder, logical, and more robotic ones, so she can get back to her idyllic life of testing. But none of that humanity would have sunken in over the course of the game at all, if not for her blatant disregard for the lives of the companion cubes upon her reawakening. The Portal series is fascinating to look at for how it influenced design and writing in games. When I played titles like The Talos Principle, another puzzle game, and The Stanley Parable, a narrative-focused game about free will, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were both vaguely Portal-like, despite having entirely unique mechanics, stories, and tones. Of course, that's not to say Portal is a flawless experience. Portal 1 is very short, lacking narrative and mechanical depth, and its controls can come off as sluggish, unresponsive, or finicky at times. As for Portal 2, the writing can sometimes become grating with how hard it's trying to be funny, and there are long sections that feel like they weren't play-tested enough with terrible signposting and incredibly unintuitive puzzle solutions that often feel unintended. But that doesn't change the fact that Portal is really effective and compelling without resorting to the over-the-top violence, sky-high stakes, and ridiculous melodrama that the video game market is oversaturated with.
Well, here we are again. It's always such a pleasure. Remember when you tried to kill me twice? Oh, how we laughed and laughed. Except I wasn't laughing. Under the circumstances, I've been shockingly nice. You want your